Welcome to the Monthly Marquee. I'm your host, Bart Lovins, Director for the Hardin County Schools Performing Arts Center. Our first guest is also our Pack Kids Spotlight. Please welcome Ayana Roit. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Did I get that Roit?
Yeah.
I know. It's bad. That is that like the ultimate bad dad joke that you get all the time with your last name?
Well, no. What my friends usually joke about my first name because
It's so pretty. Why?
well, because during Young Frankenstein, Miss Sherry would accidentally call me Anaya, which is my name backwards, so they all call me that. It's hilarious.
Well, you know, that's funny because I heard people calling you that and I went, that's not right. And I wasn't in on the joke. Oh, how funny. That's also pretty. You could go by either one, they'd be fine.
Well, I kind of do now.
Well, you're our Pack Kids Spotlight. You just got done with Young Frankenstein, and you're going into the Laramie Project. One is a pro-am, semi-professional kind of production, and now you're going into your high school senior play. You've done productions with both groups now. How would you compare the two experiences?
Well, with central shows, I think it's cool because, you know, we don't have our own stage to perform on, so we just practice out in the hallway by Miss Dakin's room. And so it's kind of cool seeing it be acted there a million times, to transfer it to the Pack stage and see how well that turns out, which is usually pretty well. Mm-hmm. But then with like a Pack Pro-Am show, you're just always on stage and you get to see the set come together and the world slowly be built behind you, which is also pretty cool. They're both fun experiences. Mm-hmm. I enjoy both.
And tell us a little bit about the Laramie Project.
The Laramie Project is about the Matthew Shepard story, which is, if you don't know, it's about in Laramie, Wyoming, when a man who was named Matthew Shepard was killed by two men for being gay. It was a vicious beating too. It was just awful. And so members from the Tectonic Theater went to Laramie for like ever and interviewed a whole bunch of people and took all those interviews and a couple other things and put them together and made the Laramie Project. And
you're playing 4 or 5 different people in that community and reenacting their interviews.
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a later segment today. But so your 4 characters, what's that experience been like? What have you learned from playing these people in that situation?
Well, playing 4 different characters is kind of wild. I've learned that how much you need to do to like differentiate different characters. Like when you're acting, you can't just be like, okay, I am this character and I'm going to make this character completely myself. You have to give them their own mannerisms and way of speaking and stances, and just, you have to really make everything different, you know? It's fun.
Otherwise it can be confusing for the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And after Laramie Project, I know you go into full high school senior mode, which is to say senioritis, right?
Yeah.
But you've got college to figure out, driving, things to take care of, and you'll have some free time, and then you'll be involved with Central Hardin's production of Little Women.
Yeah.
And that has that had auditions yet?
No,
Okay.
auditions should be like November, December-ish.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And you've also done youth theater, mm-hmm. and that was Hello Dolly this summer?
Yeah.
So what was your experience with Hello Dolly? Here's my takeaway from it that I hear from so many of the students that were involved, is they found out they were doing Hello Dolly, and they were disappointed.
Oh.
Because it was this old show, like as old as me show. And then they got into it, and they found that it was funny, and they found that they liked the music, that it was really hummable, and they came out really enjoying the shows. Is that kind of parallel for you?
Well, I mean, kind of. I didn't know too much about Hello Dolly before I went into it, but then before auditions, actually, me and my dad watched the movie from forever ago, and it was funnier than I expected it to be. It was very fast-paced, bop, 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 mm-hmm. But I liked it.
Yeah. It's a fun show. It's one of my favorite shows too.
Really?
Yeah. I think the comedy of it is it's very sharp. It's very funny, witty. Yeah, as opposed to Young Frankenstein, which is just goofy.
Yeah, absolutely. Young Frankenstein was wild. I loved it.
What's your best takeaway from that experience, being in Young Frankenstein?
Oh, Young Frankenstein was so much fun. It was cool because it's obviously the most professional show I've ever been in. And it was nice to get to work with like people with all different kinds of experience because, I'm working with my friend Savannah, who's like been doing theater her whole life, and I'm working with my other friends who have been doing theater their whole life, and I'm working with these adults who have been doing theater, and it's just so many people from so many different backgrounds, even though I just made them all sound the same. It was great.
And you learn something different from all of them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think it's also fun for our students to get to perform on stage with their teachers.
Oh, that was the first time that Jared and Kathleen had to, do that scene where they're up in the air for like 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. The ensemble had gotten done for that day, so I was waiting for my mom to come pick me up. So I'm sitting on my phone in the house, and I look up, and I see Kathleen on top of Jared, and I go, "Ah!" And I looked back down. So that was something. But it was also fun to like do Mania on stage with Jared because it's like, oh, here's my biology teacher dancing,
right?
And we're just going at it. It was so.
I like those shared experiences.
I
think they create a really good bond between teachers and students. If you were a young student who happens to be watching this, or their parents, what would you tell them about, let's say, an elementary school student who might be interested in performing arts? What would you say to encourage them at this point, having gone through what you've gone through already?
Don't do a show like Young Frankenstein, you're too young.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many different opportunities in Hardin County, so like just go for it and see what you like, because theater's so fun, you're gonna end up liking something.
Yeah.
Just don't hesitate.
Excellent. Ayana, thank you so much for spending the day with us.
Thank you.
And Skaggs Limousine for supporting us.
Oh, that was fun.
That was fun, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next guests are the director and cast members from Central Hardin High School's upcoming project, the Laramie Project. We have Miss Sarah Dakin, director. We have Allie Ramiro, part of the cast. And again, our Pat Kid Spotlight, Ayana Roit. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ms. Dakin, tell us just a little bit about what the Laramie Project is and why you thought this was a good production to bring to our community.
Sure. So in 1998, fall of 1998, Matthew Shepard was killed in Laramie, Wyoming. He was a 21-year-old gay college student, and his death brought national and international attention to hate crimes. Many, many years later, he is one of the people who was named when federal hate crimes legislation was finally enacted, but it took a long time and a lot of work from a lot of folks for that to happen. As you and I were talking earlier, that all happened before my students were born. And so part of our process working on this show was looking at, what were things like for folks then, what's going on these days. We've come a long way, we're still not quite there yet, and working some of that into our experience. So the play comes from in about a year and a half after the time that Matthew Shepard died. The Tectonic Theater Project folks went out and interviewed people of the town who were affected in one way or another by this event. It was his friends, people who knew the perpetrators, people who were presenting the case in the media and looking at that side of it, looking at the legal proceedings. And so it's kind of a pioneering piece of documentary theater, of just looking at, here are real things that happened, how can we present that to an audience to help them consider an event that's happened.
And Allie, how many characters do you play in the show?
9.
And of those 9, what character really stands out for you in one way or another, in a good way or a bad way?
My favorite is Andrew Gomez, because we have the connection that we are both like Hispanic, and I just feel like I have like more experience with it, because he's like a Mexican gangster, and I lived in Mexico for a year, so I've experienced a lot of that.
And what's your takeaway from playing all of these different characters? What's it left you learning?
Well, just like the experience of it, since it's my first like play in high school, like many of these characters I have connections with because like I am part of the LGBT, so it's hard to explain, but like I just have these connections with them, and with being in this play, it's like, oh, this is like an eye-opener that this stuff does happen.
Yeah.
And that's like a fear of mine, kind of.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing with this play is that because they share so many different perspectives, you know, audience members are going to go like, oh yeah, I feel that way too. And sometimes you're going to go, oh yeah, I feel that way too. Wow, but they sound like a jerk when they say it, so maybe I need to think about that, you know.
Mm-hmm. Ayana, we were talking just a little bit earlier in our interview. What do you get out of this performance by watching the process that the other students are going through to get through, to find their characters as an observer?
Well, a lot of my friends are doing really, really well with like differentiating characters. Like my friend Trevor, who's doing super, super well. Just I listen to him and I'm like, I don't even have to look at my script and I know who he's playing. And it's just, oh, it's crazy how good he's doing. And it's like, you know, you see your friend talking about this experience that you know they don't have, but they're doing so well, and you're like, you can give them advice for that. Or you're talking about an experience you don't have, but maybe your friend does, and they can help you with that. It's very much we all can somehow connect to these characters in some ways, and we can all help each other.
Even the ones that you don't want to put on a pedestal.
Yeah,
Even the ones whose opinions you may not agree with, there's some human component to them that you can identify
Absolutely.
with.
Yeah.
Ms. Dakin, how do you help the students bring to life something that's not within their own personal life experience?
Well, we had a great conversation one day in rehearsal. You know, we kind of started talking about one thing, and it evolved into like an hour later we were still talking, and a couple kids were like, but we need to do act two. I'm like, this is part of the work too, it's okay. You know, but about the things that we see in our school every day. That and even if it's not exactly the same, we still see some of that same prejudiced language and that same like, oh, I didn't really mean that, but you know somebody did, and that, you know, that kind of thing. And that's part of why I invited some of the faculty members to be part of the production with us, because I feel like it'll be very powerful for students and their families to hear those faculty members saying, you know what, when you call somebody these words, that's violence. And that is not something that has gone away, even though we're talking about events that were before these guys were born.
And how do you feel? We live in the Me Too moment right now. And I think there's connection there as well. I don't know that we would have the Me Too movement without what happened to Matthew Shepard.
Sure, and I talk to the kids a lot about that, you know, we're living at a time where they can speak up. And there might be times that you feel scared to, but there are ways that can happen. And there are ways to learn more. You know, I tell the kids all the time, like, they all know more in high school about what's going on in the world than I did when I was in high school. And I was one of the kids who knew what was going on in the world. You know what I'm saying? So I think that this show is a great opportunity for people to say, look what we can say. You know, look what the arts give us an opportunity to say, for sure.
When is Laramie Project?
October 18th and 19th. We have a 7 p.m. show on Friday the 18th and a 2 p.m. show on Saturday the 19th. We also have a school day show that Friday morning. We've got so far Central Hardin, and we just confirmed Elizabethtown High School students coming. So we're very excited to have them up too.
Great. And ticket prices?
$5 for the public shows, cash or check at the door. We got plenty of room at the PAC. We'd love to have folks come out.
Very good. Thank you all very much for being here. Really appreciate it. I'm thrilled that this production is happening. I think it has a lot to say, not only about your generation, but about our generation, and it's important to share with the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bart. If I could just say real quick, we want to just remind families that we are describing a violent event. So we don't see the violence on stage, but we do hear about it. We do have permission to change some of the profanity that people used in their original interviews, but we do have some challenging language that, you know, is essential to part of the story. So just folks should know what they're getting into. We want to see you come out to the show, but you know,
Parental discretion
do
advised.
do some homework first.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for adding that.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
Yeah. Thank you, Bart.
Our next guest is Miss Carmen Caldera Brasca, Director of the E-Town Performing Arts Center. Welcome again.
Thank you.
It feels like 18 years since I've seen you. So let's do a little catch up.
Yes.
In September, we had National Arts
In education.
and Education Week.
Yes.
And you guys celebrated in a big way.
We did. We try to do something with all of the schools just to kind of promote the idea of the importance of arts and education. And so we had several classes from Morningside Elementary come and have theater classes. And they did improvisation and characterization, and from the first grade through, I think, third grade was the highest we got this year.
Please tell me there's some of it on film.
But there is not.
Oh, it sounds adorable.
But we will be doing the whole school. We're going to have all of Morningside come in the spring and do theater workshops through their music class.
First,
so we will
first graders doing improv just sounds like a hoot.
They were so good.
Because there's no intimidation, they just do. It's
Yes,
play. It's
exactly.
play. And play is what they know.
Exactly. And by the time I work with the high schoolers, I have to go, okay, you've got to get back in touch with your inner child, especially with our auditions for Where the Green Things Play. I was like, you're animals. You have to be animals. And I know you were told you can't do that anymore once you get to a certain age. It's time to grow up. But no, you've got to be a lizard. Show me a lizard. So it's a whole lot easier with that grade. But their creativity and their imagination and even their ability to work together was just like their teachers were standing there going, I have never seen that child do anything even close to that.
Well, and that's one of the things, like we have Missoula Children's Theater come in every spring. I'm like, man, I wish there was some way for every elementary school teacher to sit in on that process.
Yes.
Because you see things from your students you don't see in the classroom. You learn techniques of getting things done that are not in a handbook.
Right.
And so having the teachers there to experience it, observe it, is
Yes.
really important too.
Yes, and they saw things, they were like, I can so use this in the class to reach this kid now, because there was not that connection. And they've like broken free and they're ready. It's been wonderful. So we had about 100 students come through that week and experience doing theater and learning about it. And then the next week we had Morningside's Drama Club come in to find out about what they were doing for their Christmas production and get ready for auditions. And they had over 100 students in grades 3 through 5. And she will use all of them. Every student will get to do something. They will have a speaking part or chorus or tech. I think she has about 20 doing tech
Great.
roles between set and costumes. And so yes, over 100 students auditioned or are involved with that production.
Wow.
So
wow.
yeah.
Congrats on that. That's really
Thank you. Yes.
that's how long have you been at the school now?
This is my third year.
Yeah.
Third
3
year.
years ago, to try to pull that kind of thing together would have been monumental.
Yes.
To try to, that's
Yes.
wonderful.
And now we're going to have, I think, 5 theater productions over the course of the year between all of our schools, at least 5.
That's great.
There's usually 1 or 2 that pop up and go, we want to do a show.
Hey.
Okay. Bring it. Let's do it. The more the merrier.
And what's next on the horizon?
Well, we are in rehearsals. We start rehearsals today for the Morningside Drama Club's production. And we will start rehearsals Friday for Where the Green Things Play, which is our gifted, talented drama students and some of the Elizabethtown High School Theater Guild students. And that will be performed for the preschool, kindergarten, and 1st through 5th grades at both elementary schools. So the cast will be doing 3 shows in one day. It's going to give them a taste of this is what theater's like.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you still serious about it? So it will be a great experience for them. And also in October, we have our International Thespian Society troupe being inducted for TK Stone, which is part of the National Education Educational Theater Association.
Okay.
It's kind of like the beta for theater students.
Okay.
It's an honor society. They have to earn so many points and so many hours and so many different facets of theater. And TK Stone is the first school in Hardin County to have a troupe chartered.
Very cool.
So we are very excited for them, and we will have a big celebration of theater that night when we charter the troupe and induct the first members.
Very cool. We
Yeah.
need to talk more about that. I need to learn more about this.
Yes,
This is new to me.
It is a wonderful, wonderful organization. It gives them a lot of scholarship opportunities in the future. There are competitions they can go to, the auditions for colleges that they can go to just for the members, and there's a lot of wonderful things.
Excellent, excellent. Carmen, thank you very much.
Thanks
and
for
we'll
having
learn
me.
more about where the green things
Play.
Where the green, wild things is in my head. Where the green
Yes.
things play. We'll learn more about that when we meet up in November.
Yes, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next guest is Mr. Michael Radford, representing the Hardin County Playhouse and their upcoming production, A Night with Poe. Michael, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
It's been a while since we've gotten to talk with you. I think we did maybe back downtown at one point when
Yes.
you were involved with the production.
Been 2 years.
So this is a production that you have adapted.
Yes.
And you are directing.
Yes.
Which came first, chicken or the egg? Is this something that you've been working on and then brought to the Playhouse and said, hey, I have this thing? Or did it kind of work the other way around?
In my mind, I had it.
Ah,
And so I approached the Playhouse and said, hey, is this something we could do? And they, sure, yeah, let's have a little bit of it in writing. So I sort of gave a sketch of this is what I want to do. And they're like, okay, let's go for it. So
very cool.
Yeah.
And you know, we were talking a little bit about Poe beforehand. He was I can't even, you think about Twilight or any of these other, almost any Tim Burton movie. There is some maligned, woe-begone
Yeah.
artist who's misunderstood and depressed and in love, but can't,
Yeah.
be with his loved one. It's all Edgar Allan Poe.
Poe encompasses all that. And that's what we try to point out in that he was the king of everything now.
Yeah.
He started it. And so many stories have a hint of Edgar Allan Poe in them.
Yeah. So how do you go about taking this 18th century writer and bringing it to life for 20th century,
Well, I think
or 21st century?
I think it's a lot like Shakespeare. It still resonates today. You look at the story, yeah, people are still jealous. They still get revenge. People still try to escape reality by partying, by pulling. So it does transfer itself well. However, his stories are written as poems and stories, and to adapt them into a play version was a little more difficult.
So how do you do that? What's your structure?
Well, with some of the stories are being told as a storyteller, so that it's not a play. There's a storyteller, the actors in the back enacting it. So,
Okay.
and that seemed the best way to pull that one out. Some of them, and then I took the characters, actually took the story apart and gave them dialogue.
Gotcha.
So, so that worked. So it just took it different ways. So out of all 5 stories, they're all done a little differently.
Well, that's kind of interesting too, because we talked as well. He himself was very morose.
Yes.
And you can have a play that begins here and is this kind of downward spiral of depressing.
Yes.
And so to break up how the stories are told, I think that's fascinating.
Yes, we try to make it a little lively, and we're keeping the creepy factor, but yet it's coming around really well, I think.
And how does this production fit into the rest of Hardin County Playhouse's season?
Well, it's we try to touch a base with every different audience. We did Harvey, which was people who were older got that one. Then we're going to end up the year with Heathers, which is more of a younger people's show. And this one I think fits into that. We're hoping to get those people who never go to theater.
Gotcha.
But they're coming to see Poe because they love Poe.
Gotcha.
And we're also hoping to get people who have no idea what Poe is, but we just want to go to theater, and they're like, oh, that guy's pretty cool. So we're hoping to get a little of both, and that's the idea of theater, to bring new people in and give something for the people who are our regulars.
Sure. Tell me a little bit about your cast. How many in your cast, and how are the roles and parts divvied up?
That has been an interesting conversation. My cast has varied from day to day because of conflicts here and there. So that's been interesting. I have some non-speaking roles, so that's an interesting aspect, but they're very important. Most everyone has 2 or 3 parts. So it gives them a chance to be on stage a little bit more and do something in the show. I have a cast from 14 to I think 85. So big age range.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
there's a big diversity there. Some have never done a show before. Some have done a few shows, and some have several shows under the belt. So it's a nice variety.
Cool. If somebody's on the fence about this, what would you say to lure them into the theater? What's your big tagline? What's the big takeaway?
I think if you're a Poe fan, I think you're going to really resonate with, oh yeah, I remember that story in school. And like, if you're not a Poe fan, if you don't know much about Poe, give it a chance, because if you like Stephen King, you like some of the other writers, this is a lot like Stephen King.
Sure.
I mean, he did all this, and like we point out, he didn't talk about really morbid things. He just took ordinary objects and then twisted a story around them. Revenge, it's just a common thing, but he made a pretty big scene of it. Yeah. So just give it a chance. If you've never gone to theater, this is your one thing you should check out, I think.
Cool. When are show dates?
Show dates are the 4th and 5th, so we open Friday, Saturday. We skip a week, which is not traditional for us, and then we go the 18th, 19th.
Okay. And how can people find out about prices and tickets?
HardenCatPlayhouse.com.
Okay.
You can get tickets online. There's also 351-0577, I believe, is the number.
Great.
So and we alternate. So the other 2 weekends are the Ghost Walk from Harden Cat Playhouse.
Sure.
So it's something.
And that's also going on, and that's fun.
That's a fun thing to do, and check that out because there's some really cool stories about some people from our past, and so.
Excellent. Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you.
With any luck, we all have a mentor or two in our lives that we can attempt to emulate as we fumble our way through life. Often it is through one-on-one tutelage. My father, John Lovins, was an art teacher with Hardin County Schools for 27 years, and I studied under him as a student for, well, as long as I was his son. At other times, your mentor is someone you never meet, but inspires you from afar. Muppet creator Jim Henson has been part of my life through his work since before I started school. What I've learned from both their successes as well as their failures could fill a book, but was summed up really well in an opinion piece by Sims Wyatt for Inc. magazine. Encourage a person's talent, nurture that talent, and motivate people to look to themselves for ongoing development. Be a teacher. Empower the people who work with you. Be patient. You are developing people, not showing them how smart you are. Create an infectious mood of laughter. Yes, you can do serious, creative work and have fun at the same time. The Muppets demonstrate that over and over again. Hear the genius in people. Find a way to make others' ideas work. Treat failures as experiments. Take setbacks as lessons on the way to something greater. Love your work, but also like and appreciate the people who are sharing that work with you. Enjoy success, not just your own, but also the accomplishments of people around you. Helping them be great does not diminish you. Be unafraid. Try new things. It's the only way to stay innovative, and if you're not innovative, why are we doing what we're doing? Be a role model. Be fearless, hardworking, generous, and calm. That combination of attitudes will spread and be just as contagious. Jim and my dad both passed away at the age of 53. Now at the start of my own 54th year, I still strive daily to be a better person, artist, and leader, thanks to what I've learned from them, and hope that I, in some way, in turn, can continue to teach what they taught me to others.